truck breaking down or mentally breaking down, you have somebody that you can reach out to. We call it a Farm Bureau family for a reason.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Farm Bureau Podcast. I'm Allie Shipley, and today we are sitting with Miss Katie Nunez in Iberville Parish, where we're continuing our series on Mental Health Month. So Katie, thank you so much for having us out here and agreeing to sit down and talk about what's often a difficult topic.
Thank y'all for having me, and I'm glad to have y'all out here.
Let's start at the very beginning. You're a very familiar face to Farm Bureau and probably a lot of the listeners on the Louisiana Farm Bureau Podcast. But in case we have somebody new here listening, can you tell us who you are, who your mom and them are, and just kind of give us your whole background?
I am from here, grew up just across the street from where we're sitting right now. Grew up as a fourth generation sugarcane farmer. My dad and mom are Sally and Cecil Ramagos, who are very active in Farm Bureau as well. We grew sugarcane and soybeans, and grew up with my three brothers working on the farm and just growing up as a farm kid, and which I think everybody should have some experience in because it's the best. And that's kind of how I got my start in farming. And my dad has always been active in Farm Bureau. He's been parish president for many years, and when he was ready to step down, I was voted on as parish president for Iberville. And even before that, I was very active with the state. I think I went to my first women's leadership convention when I was like 18 with my mom, and haven't stopped going to events since then. And that just led to more involvement in leadership roles. The labor chairman for Louisiana Farm Bureau. I sit on the Labor Issues Advisory Committee for American Farm Bureau, and I'm the district director on the Louisiana State board as well.
You're very involved in Farm Bureau, to say the least. Y'all all are, so we're very thankful. You're like the Farm Bureau family within the Farm Bureau family. I know you touched a lot on the Farm Bureau involvement and a little bit on your background in ag, but can you kind of walk us through, again, you said you grew up on a soybean and sugarcane farm, but kind of talk about your life path and discerning what you wanted to do career-wise and kind of where you land on that, where we are today in that.
If I went through the list of jobs that I held from the time I graduated high school, it's a wild mix of random things, because I like to work, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just wanted to try everything. So it was like a job popped up, I applied for it. But in the background was always my dad's farm. Actually, on y'all driving up, our farm actually started down the road where my grandfather was farming before all the land was transferred, and then he moved to Plaquemine is where we finished farming sugarcane. And so it was just always around us. My dad, we, grew accustomed to holidays, not on holidays, and, just gone out in the field every day after school to see my dad. And then that just turned into working. My brothers were working in the field with him, and I always my dad was one who never was like, oh, only the boys have a role on the farm. He always encouraged me to do. Now, my brothers were the ones that were like, you are not driving a tractor.
She said, hold my beer.
Yeah, I never did, because they know me well, and I'm clumsy and accident prone. So I did more, that kind of led me into more of the paperwork side of it. And so I can remember my dad pulling up and is like, oh, we got to go through the mail or the bills. And he's like, getting the mail and the paperwork out of his truck, and we're like scraping the mud off of it or the shop dust, and filing for him and getting stuff ready for taxes or whatever it may be. And then as the farm changed and as the landscape of agriculture changed and moving more into needing foreign labor, it was our farm, and we also had a partnership, and we were getting up to 60 H-2A laborers on our farm and the partnership. And it got to a point where I was working for the state at the time, and my dad was spending more time in an office trying to keep track of all the paperwork. I hated my job, and so he was just like, you hate your job, I want to get back on a tractor, can you come back on the farm? And that was a no-brainer, and that's what started me doing the labor paperwork and kind of just handling that side of it and learning the business side of farming, because we knew if we were going to move forward as a family with the farm, my brothers could handle the field work and and all of that, but I was going to handle the business side of it. And so that's kind of where that took off. And it was the only thing that felt right. It was like I never knew what I wanted to do, and every job I liked parts of it. But this was the only thing that I really wanted to do and loved to do.
You're pretty good at it, and you're doing great, and you're busy. We were kind of talking about it. It's such a niche job, but it's such an important thing that is often overlooked, and you were kind of walking us through some of that before. So thank you for what you do, because I think that's a lot of unseen of what farmers do, and the part of ag. We show a lot on the farm, but a lot of it's paperwork, and there's a lot of hoops that a lot of people have to work through, and it's sometimes stressful.
Absolutely.
So I feel like we've kind of touched on a lot, but we kind of introduced this. This is Mental Health Month, which is kind of why we're sitting here today. And clearly you've been involved in agriculture a long time. It's what you've grown up with, and it's what you know. So the stresses of the farm and the mental health aspect of agriculture is something you're pretty familiar with. And it's obviously something you're very passionate about. You've said a lot about what you do in Farm Bureau, but you failed to mention that you also volunteered to sit on the Mental Health Committee, as if your time wasn't already allocated far enough. You decided to step up to that challenge. Can you kind of tell us a little bit of, why you said, I would like to be a part of that initiative when Courtney brought it before the board, and 2, kind of your background to what led you to make that decision?
And I will talk about it in 2 parts, because it is they're linked but very separate at the same time. When Courtney came, I was so excited. For one, I was excited that she brought it up, because not many people talk about mental health. And at the time that she brought it up, I couldn't even hold back tears to hurry up and say that I wanted to help with it and that I couldn't wait to get started with it, just because of where I was personally at that time. But before that, I can remember being a little girl growing up on the farm. And, my parents weren't ones where they weren't going to let us know that there were struggles or that there were hard times, but that was a whole different, we're talking about 40 years ago. It was harder then. The prices weren't as good. Everything it was just working on a whole different level at that time. And so I can remember them stressing about finances, and I'm the oldest of my, brothers. And so I can remember struggles, and I can remember them, trying to figure stuff out. And I just grew up knowing that farming was something that you had to love, because it was difficult and it was stressful, and it did take a toll on you personally, on marriages, on families, on holidays. There's lots of times that, trying to explain when you have, brothers that start dating, or anybody who's coming into a farming family, they don't understand that it's just going to be, the holiday's going to be whenever we can meet, or whenever, grinding is finished, or anything like that. And so there's stresses involved in it from the beginning. And then through that, you can see the changes in technology and stuff that comes out. But with all of that, it might have made some things easier on the farm, but the financial stress and the weight on your shoulders just continue to get heavier and heavier. And in 2019, 2020, we ended up having to sell our farm. The landowners, when you work for a landowner, and they decided to farm, so we sold. And that was something that, it's crushing when you grow up as something, and it takes a toll on you. I know every time the video package comes out of Piper, my daughter, walking in the field with my dad, and talking about growing up on a farm, at that time we're thinking she's going to be 5th generation, and to not have that, it's hard. To have my dad, who is epitome of just a good man and a farmer, and what you picture when you picture a farmer. And for him to not feel like a farmer anymore, it's hard. And so that's sorry. It's something that stays with you, because it's something that you love. It's something that you grow up with. And anybody who's watching that comes from a farming family or is farming, that no struggle takes away that love or that passion for it. So that was hard. And then going forward, seeing him still working on a farm with somebody, but not having that financial weight or that responsibility of that, you can kind of see that lift. And so like, while all of that was difficult, and I'm still going to be upset about it till the day I die, you know, while all of that's difficult, it worked out in some way, shape, or form for all of us. And all of us have managed to still stay involved in farming and agriculture in one way or another. All of those stressors changed over time, just like they do for everybody and every job. I just think the difference is that most people go to a job because they have to, and you know, if it's not the right pay or it's not whatever, they just find another job. Whereas farmers, they're going to find a way to make it work because that's what they love to do and that's what they grew up with, and so that's, you know, ingrained in them.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we talk in our office a lot. Like, there's huge initiatives because the research is showing the stressors in ag are different. The mental health of our farmers and our ag workers is different, but nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about the people who are stressed out, who are losing the people that are experiencing it. It's hard to talk about it. That's a hard thing for somebody to say that. And that's one of the stressors. These are generational farms. Nobody wants to be the generation that it ends with. And there's this stigma around it that it's a failure, and it's not. The times are different. The times are tough, and it's just a hard reality that we're in that I think the general public, again, just doesn't understand. They think we'll quit farming. That's what we not laugh, because this is not funny, and I'm not trying to say that. But we have you have to laugh or you'll cry kind of thing. We had a comment on some of our farm bill stuff, and it was like, the government's not bailing out carpenters, and it said nobody said you had to have cabinets to live. Like, you don't need a kitchen remodel to live. This is our food supply.
I think people who are not directly involved in agriculture, you know, just take any commodity. When they're looking at that individual commodity, they don't realize that individual commodity, when they're going to DC or when they're talking to anybody, they're not just talking about their commodity. They're talking about the ag industry as a whole. And that's one thing that I know I'm proud of, to be able to represent agriculture and farmers and ranchers, is because, yes, they do fight for their individual commodities, but at the same time, you're fighting for agriculture as a whole, because that's our nation's food supply. And no matter what commodity you're talking about, that still applies. You have to have that. And so I think that, you know, all of that, and doing that with my dad, and seeing those stresses, and then seeing the changes of labor, and that kind of led me into my business now. And so doing his paperwork led to me eventually having a farmer's daughter and doing the paperwork for farmers to get their workers. But the main part of what I do is just training the workers and being somebody that they can call if they have a problem. And so not only are we seeing mental health and stresses on the farmers and the farm workers that are here, the workers that are coming from out of the country. I take care of a lot of workers when they're here, and I'll bring them to the doctor or you know, help them set up an appointment. And the number of workers coming from out of the country that are here, they're stressing about their family in another country. They're stressing about what's going on there, about sending money home, about, you know, affording stuff here, dealing with just the cultural changes and the
not understanding half of the things that are going on.
The language barriers, all of that. And the number of workers that I'm having to bring to the doctor to talk to somebody about anxiety is, I mean, every year it grows and grows to where we are noticing it. Like, if somebody calls me with, you know, just these general symptoms, and I'm like, I'll kind of talk to them and ask them what's going on. Normally it ties back to some stress. And so we'll bring them to the doctor to you know, see about talking about anxiety. And so that's growing as well.
I know. I think it's kind of like God works mysteriously. Like, just sitting here listening to like your journey and how you've ended up where you are. Like, God put you where you're supposed to be. And if your family's farm trajectory were any different, these are people that you might not be in the place you are to help these people that you are. And I think that, you know, you were saying it's hard because y'all don't own the farm anymore, but your story is just as powerful. If honestly, I mean, you're sitting there talking like, this is the result. This is what's happening. This is going to continue to happen to more people. So I think I'm so thankful that y'all are so also involved in Farm Bureau and still continued in ag in a different route, because I think your impact is just as great, if not greater, and that God has y'all exactly where y'all are supposed to be, and you're doing such good stuff. And kind of on that note, what do you think's changed when you were kind of talking about the anxiety? You're seeing more and more people every year. Do you think it's because it's becoming more stressful, or do you think we're talking about it more, or we're like, what do you've, again, we kind of talked about, you've been around farm stress a long time. You talk about your parents never talked about it, but now looking back, you know it was there. What do you think has changed in the last 40 years from your observation in a pretty unique position?
I think it's a combination of both. Like, I think it is talked about more, still not enough, but I think it is talked about more. I think just noticing, just being a parent now and thinking about the things that my parents did with us and when I was a child, and just the, adding something like the internet and social media, that adds an enormous list of stressors that our parents didn't have to worry about with us as kids, or having a story come out and not just your local community know that something happened, or something comes out on a news story, the entire world knows. And then it's out there forever. And so you're not just dealing with the stress of it when it happens, you're dealing with the stress of it every time it comes back up or goes viral or anything like that. And so I think there's a lot more eyes on agriculture and eyes on people. And so I think that ramps up the anxiety and the stress. And, having a daughter who's autistic and has a lot of other mental, issues and diagnoses and all of that, there's a lot of times you'll hear like, oh, everybody's just throwing out an autism diagnosis now. And it's like, no, it just wasn't called anything then. They were just put somewhere, or it wasn't talked about, or they really struggled. And now it's the same thing for mental health in general. No matter what the diagnosis is, you're going to have the people that are like, oh, everybody's just throwing around a diagnosis. But it's not. It's just that people feel more comfortable talking about it. And I mean, that's one of the main reasons that I was so excited to hear Courtney bring up starting this committee and the Cultivating Connection initiative, because that is that connection and that talking, whether you talk to a therapist or on medication or are still scared to make that leap, having somebody talk about, like just y'all doing these podcasts. I mean, it could be somebody who either knows one of us and is like, they got out and spoke about it. So like, I might just mention something to them. I know dealing with Piper and the things that she has, I wouldn't have the support that I have outside of my family. I wouldn't have the support or the resources or knowledge that I have if I wouldn't have spoken up. Because once you speak up, then somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm going through the same thing. And then it kind of just opens that door. So doing these like this, y'all are opening the door for people to be able to kind of speak up. And
well, it's not us opening the door. It's y'all that are willing to share your story. We're just
y'all putting it out there though. So
well, we appreciate y'all taking the time to sit with us. Kind of jumping on this topic again, Cultivating Connections, I feel like, is in Courtney's initiative, and all of you, Mr. David, everybody that's jumped on board and said, we want to help, we're moving this forward. Agriculture's slow. Like, we're kind of talking about, like, times are changing and people are becoming more aware, and we've talked about that in the general public. Why do you think ag is behind, like, why are we more hesitant than the rest of the curve to start talking about it and to be open about it?
I don't know. Well, I was just talking about this recently because I've noticed that I've said just groups that I work with, and it's all over the country, that I find a lot of times we're very proactive about some stuff, but then a lot of stuff we're like kind of a hold on and let's wait and see. But I do think that part of it is that ag industry, farmers, ranchers in general, they're just kind of like we're going to fix it ourselves type of thing. And I think that is the main reason, like, it's not talked about as much, or they don't reach out. It's because it's kind of like, I can fix it myself, or I can take care of that, or I should be able to take care of that, is probably what I know. That's what I tell myself.
Well, I think you're right, and I think if anything, that's what Cultivating Connections is about. It's you don't have to fix it by yourself.
Yeah.
We're here, and it doesn't have to be traditional methods. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to make an appointment and go sit in the psychiatry office if you don't want to. If that's not where you want to start, you can call and check on your friends.
Again, I'm a related back to being a special needs mom. A lot of times there's a lot of unsolicited advice. And I think that goes for everything, parenting in general, not just
Especially with
parenting yes. And so I think a lot of times people listen to stuff and they're like, oh, well, that person mentioned something about mental health and they got bashed in the comments or bashed or whatever. So I'm not going to say anything. But I think the more people talk about it and the more open you are with saying, like, look, I need help, but I don't need, like, either be specific about the help that you need, or if you're somebody who sees somebody who probably needs help, just a simple, like, hey, how you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Or something simple like that, without just saying, like, you need to go talk to somebody, or, oh, I'm on this medicine and it really helped. That's not the avenue that everybody chooses. You know, while I thoroughly enjoy going to talk to my therapist, it's what helps me parent. It's what helps me keep running a business and protecting my family, and that's what helps me. And she's been able to say, like, there's a lot of times too, I think, because I know I did it myself, where I'm like, I'm not depressed. I'm like, it's just a little slump, or I'm just, sad right now. Day. It's just a bad day. And it wasn't until the therapist was like, you are depressed. Like, this is what this is. It's okay to say it. It's okay to, like, there's no way to not be sometimes, because of what in 2026 you have to deal with, just doing any job, not just ag.
Yeah.
And so once you add all that farm stress on top of just everyday general stress, that's a heavy load to carry.
And I think it kind of goes back, I laugh, like, again, I'm very fortunate. I've never experienced some of the things you're talking about, and I'm not leading to that at all, but I grew up in a farm family, and life's tough to get a helmet, and it could be worse. And I'm thankful for that mentality in so many aspects of my life. But I do wonder if I was struggling, like, it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Like, we were kind of talking about your dad earlier, and farmers in general, that we can fix this. And it's again, it's a great mentality. It's a great work ethic, and it's so important. But when it comes to mental health, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, because it could bite you at the same time as, strengthen you to do something. But at the same time, I know I struggle with just saying no to something. Yeah. Like, I just want to be involved because I don't want to not do everything that I can. And at the same time, the older I get, I'm learning that I have to say no, and it's perfectly okay to just sit at home and do nothing for 5 minutes. Because if you are not there and you're not taking care of your mental health, you can't be there for everybody else. You can't be there for the farm. You can't successfully run a farm if you're not mentally there and mentally acknowledging what the stresses are.
And it's kind of funny. I feel like my dad, like, he'll be like, well, my guys just needed a day off. And I'm like, well, you didn't take the day off. Like, when are you going to just take a day off? And it's easy to see it in somebody else. And it's kind of like, it's easy to recognize that somebody else needs a break, or that you can but to admit it to yourself is
my dad was famous for, like, if I would go out there, I'm like, you don't need to be doing that. And he's like, I'm never going to ask the workers to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Yeah. And I'm like, I get that, but still we need to take care of you.
Yeah.
Or take a break. And so it is. And I know just from working with other farms for my business, they're all the same.
I was about to say, but I think it's their personality. It kind of goes back that we can fix it ourselves. Yeah. I can do it. I'm a hard worker. I can work through. And again, it's such great qualities that, again, it feeds our country. If we didn't have people with these mentalities that could take tough times and to keep going and persevering through it, we wouldn't have food on the shelves. But there also has to be a point where, you at least know the signs to watch out for somebody else, even if it's not you. It's something we've got to start talking about, because everybody has a breaking point, and we want to make sure that breaking point is getting help and not an undoable situation.
Earlier you said, that farmers do all of these different things, and then paperwork is one. I know a lot of times in interviews or talks that we've gone to, we say that they wear a lot of hats. They have to be, a weather person, all of these different roles. And if you think about it that way, when you're thinking about mental health, those are all, like, individual jobs that
people are doing.
People outside of ag have just that and family life. Whereas in agriculture, they have all those jobs or roles and a family life and managing a farm. And so you really have to look at it that way, that's just more levels of stress and weight and worry. And I mean, it can go bad if you don't take care of it.
I've had the privilege of sitting in on a lot of these mental health calls and some of the conversation y'all have had behind the scenes. And one of that, you kind of opened up about your dad and that it's just so hard when being a farmer is your identity, but it's not. They're also fathers, they're also moms, they're also sisters, they're spouses, they are all of these things. And we've kind of hinted on it a little bit throughout this. We haven't even talked about the mental struggles of life outside of the farm, and that's a huge thing. All of our Farm Bureau members, regardless of what aspect of agriculture they're involved in or they just support farmers, are also people with other, the bare minimum stressors that everybody in life experiences on top of the farm. So let's, in case somebody's listening, dive into mental health just from a everyday perspective and some of those struggles and how that compels.
Just being a mom, not even special needs mom, just being a mom or a parent in general. I mean, your main concern is another life that you are responsible for. That in itself is a huge thing. Then you're talking about taking care of a home, and you got vehicles and just all the daily things. And we talked about social media earlier. You can't turn on or even if you're going for a peaceful scroll through your phone to kind of like check out for a little bit, it's not peaceful.
It's not. Like, I literally laughed. My mom, she was like, you were so hard on yourself. I'm like, yeah, because every minute it's like, this is why you should be a stay-at-home mom. And the next it's like, well, you can't be a stay-at-home.
Yeah.
And I'm not a stay-at-home mom, but it's like the world sometimes makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong because I'm not. And it's just this constant mental, emotional struggle of what you're supposed to be doing.
Or what you're not doing right, or if you're not gentle parenting, or if you're not, and it's like nobody has their stuff together all the time.
And we weren't all supposed to parent the same way. That's what makes the world go round.
And I think a lot of it too is just the generational changes. I mean, even seeing differences in how our parents raised us, but I think it also, because social media is there now, even if you just post a family outing, I know there's a lot of times just in dealing with Piper and, the fact that she was adopted from early on, we were told, like, that's her story to share. And I'm like, it's my story too, because, like, she is a part of my story just as much as I'm a part of hers. I'm going to talk about it because that all, bringing back to what we said, leads to connecting to somebody else who needed to hear that or heard you say it and gives you some piece of information. So, but then having the stress of people telling you, like, don't share that story, like, that's her story to share. And it's the same thing with dealing with, the mental health issues that we have with her. If we post a meltdown, I saw a special needs dad who's very popular on social media posted, like, I posted a meltdown that my son was having. In the comment section, people were, they were attacking him for, you are posting without his consent, you're posting his worst moment. But then under it, you have parents like me that's like, thank you. I don't feel like what I go through at home.
Anybody else's.
Like, I know now somebody else is going through it. And so having that opinion of people, you're going to have both sides of it. And it's, that in itself is you have to mentally juggle weeding out the ones that you don't want to listen to and take the advice that, you can use.
Social media is one of those double-edged swords too.
Yeah.
It's such a tool and it connects you to people you wouldn't otherwise have access to, but it also gives you plenty of unsolicited advice and keyboard warriors.
I think the older generations too that are using it, they don't understand how parenting or how our generation is now with the things that we have to deal with. And so when they're commenting, they think they're helping, but they're not. And I know we're going to end up being older and doing the same thing to our kids, but
Mom always knows best, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of jumped ahead a little bit, and I've asked you about this before, so I don't want to, if anybody's listening, I'm not prying information out of Katie that she hasn't said she's comfortable sharing. Can you kind of walk us through your personal mental health journey and kind of your personal journey in motherhood and life, and kind of when you realized, like, okay, I do need to talk to a therapist, or maybe I'm a little sadder and there is something I need to do? Would you kind of just, if somebody is like, oh, our stories kind of sound similar, but I don't know if I'm at the same point, just kind of how you got to where you are today and kind of that journey.
I think going back as far as like going all the way back into high school, now being where I am now and having the therapist and being on medication and just being aware of and acknowledging that I struggle with stuff, I can go back and look as far back as high school, things that I struggled with that I wouldn't have considered, because again, it wasn't talked about very much then, but I also wasn't aware of it. So I wouldn't have said like, oh, I have anxiety. I was just stressed or worried about whatever, like, or I wasn't, depressed about something. But like looking back now, I can see that I was, and then not knowing what I wanted to do. Like I started college, I quit college, I went back because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I liked working, so I didn't go to class. Like it was a whole lot of stuff. And then
people don't go to class for worse reasons, so there are worse qualities.
Yeah. I mean, I did those too, but like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was just kind of, I think like most people do, just trying to figure it out. It wasn't until I traveled the world and traveled alone that I kind of like had to acknowledge a lot about myself. I had to not rely on anybody else. I had to make decisions on my own. Being somebody who grew up as kind of like the friend in the group that was just like, I'll go along with whatever y'all want. Traveling alone really kind of opened up as far as like changing my personality, as far as like standing up for myself, making decisions. But then again, that coming back home and starting to work and getting into other relationships, with friends, family, anything like that, I kind of saw more that like I was struggling with things or frustrated with myself that I couldn't handle what I thought I should be able to handle, and constantly adding to the plate without really acknowledging or, having a handle on everything that's on the plate. And I think that just kind of grew. And then, going through fertility struggles and then through adoption, that in itself was a whole struggle. And I think just the more I got through that, at that point, I realized I needed, so I had at that point started talking to a therapist. And then after, having Piper and just starting to notice things that I noticed in myself, but noticing things which, going back to social media, I wouldn't have been able to get her diagnosed if I hadn't have fought for what I saw mirrored on, social media stuff. And so going through that and going through the diagnoses with her and seeing her struggles just kind of furthered me into talking to a therapist. And then, when I'm crying on the couch to her saying like, I don't know why I can't handle all this. She's like, no one person is supposed to handle that much.
But was that so revolutionary?
Yeah.
Somebody had to tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel dumb saying it because it's like you want to beat yourself up, and it's like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, I could have just took something off the plate. But it's hard to do, and I think it goes back to just growing up in agriculture. It's just how we handle things, and how, not that it's a bad thing, but it can be if you don't acknowledge it and handle it, and being okay, like, I got to get on medicine. And then you get on medicine and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? Like. And so doing all of that, and then just the stress of having to parent a child like Piper, and that nothing is ever consistent. I never know what I'm gonna deal with. I've gotten very comfortable sharing stuff because almost mad that I'm like I'm angry, so I'm gonna share it kind of thing, because it's like, if you just say, oh, like we're having a rough day, or like when somebody says, how y'all doing? And it's like, oh, we're good. And it's really not. I've learned now that like saying like, it's bad.
Helps you.
I feel so much like it takes that like guilt, or that, if I would have left that conversation before being like, oh, we're just fine. When we get in the car and I'm like, oh my God, we're not fine. Why can't people see that we're not? Well, if you don't tell them, they're not going to see. And so that's kind of where I am now, that it's like nothing is off limits with me. I am open about it. I learned that through our adoption, that like if I was open about every struggle that we had or why we made decisions, I met with so many couples that were going through adoption that didn't think to ask things that I went through or experienced that I was very open with, but nobody had been open about it until I was. And people were like, oh, we adopted too. And I'm like, you didn't know that. And so like, there's been key points through my life that it's all been the same thing. It's been very different topics across the whole thing, but the same thing. It's like, until you share it or until you reach out, whether you're reaching out for your own help or to help somebody else, until you do that, you don't see that, like, there's so many more people out there that either are experiencing the same thing as you, or need to hear what you're saying, or need that hand, to help.
There's so many, I'm laughing. This is a Farm Bureau podcast, but it's like farmers reach out for everything else. Like, hey, I need this, or anybody know where this is? Like, why are we so hesitant to do that in personal life? Like, hey, I need help. Hey, I'm not having a good day. Like, it's just, why do we feel that? Is it pride? Is it just?
Like, I think a current theme in Farm Bureau is always like, if I break down in whatever state, I know a Farm Bureau member that can help me. And it's like, okay, same thing.
If you're breaking down, somebody's there. Somebody's
there. And so I think that's a great point. Truck breaking down or mentally breaking down, you have somebody that you can reach out to. I mean, we call it a Farm Bureau family for a reason.
I think that's a new tagline for the Cultivating Connection. That's not fun. I think that's just a really great point. And Katie, I'm going to not speak on Piper's behalf, but she's going to be so thankful one day when she's able to look back that she had a mom that was strong enough to talk about these things and to fight on her behalf and to have these conversations that are hard, because she's already a step ahead. She doesn't have to wait till she realizes those things in herself. She has the now. I'm thankful that I'm raising a daughter in this generation and that people are paving the way, that if she's struggling, that she knows that it's okay to ask for help. And our parents are doing. I'm so thankful for the way I was raised. I'm so thankful for all of it, but I am thankful that my daughter's going to grow up in a different time when it comes to that. She might be, there's a lot of negatives with the next generation, but that is a positive.
I think you can probably speak on the same thing as what I'm getting ready to say. I knew I could go to even if it was a big old mess up, I knew I could go to my parents about anything. Yeah. And that's what I try, like, even on the very, very hard days where I cannot envision what our future would look like with Piper. Even on those days, that's what I try to keep at the forefront, is that, like, I want her to know, no matter what she did, or no matter what just happened, or what diagnosis she has, that I'm going to be in her corner and she can come to me and talk to me about it no matter what.
We'll figure it out. If I don't know the answer, we're going to find the answer.
We'll figure it out some way.
And I think that's kind of the message of all of this, to kind of hone it in. If you are struggling, if you know somebody who's struggling, if you don't know that you're struggling but you think something's wrong, you are here. We are here. There is somebody here for you that is willing to listen. You just have to ask for that.
And just like everybody's story's not the same, everybody's solution isn't the same either. So for somebody, it might just be talking like you and I are talking, and that helps them tremendously, and they can go about their life and doing what and they know if they need to pick up the phone or come sit with somebody, they can. Whereas somebody else might need to go talk to a professional, to seek other options out there. And so what y'all are putting out on the website and through these podcasts are all the resources. But I think the biggest thing is just reach out to somebody, whether it's for your benefit or theirs.
I'm laughing. Our toddlers were toddling this morning. That's what we were saying. Like, I feel better today just sitting here talking and just, what? Sometimes it's hard being a parent, and that's okay. It's okay for every day not to be great and to be wonderful. And some people have it harder, and some days are harder. But we're all facing a lot of similar problems in a lot of ways, and we're more alike than we are different. And I think that's just so important. Katie, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to talk on? I just want to give you the open floor before we end this podcast today. You have been so open with us, and I'm so appreciative. But if there's anything we haven't talked on that you want to touch on.
I know listening to Courtney's podcast, and I'm can't wait to hear David's, and just in our calls, Cultivating Connection. I love the name of it, and the cultivating ties that agriculture to it, but it's the connection word that is the key to it. And just to make sure that regardless of what resources are out there, there's always a better way than what you might be thinking. There's always a solution to figure out. If you don't have it in your own personal family, your Farm Bureau family is there. And there's so many people that would love to talk to you, whether you don't want to talk about what's stressing you out at all, just to get your mind off of it, or if you want to dive deep and talk about it. And I know there's nothing is off limits with me. So if there's anybody out there that, anything that I've said resonates with them or they want to talk about, please reach out, because I've never had somebody reach out to me and talk to them and I walk away going like, I was supposed to help them and it really helped me too. So I think everybody can get something out of it.
I think that's so important. Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you for again, being so open with us, for talking about this often difficult topic, and just taking the time to sit with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank y'all. It was nice.
If you are someone that you know is struggling with mental health, first and foremost, know that 988 number is there for you. But if you want to hear more about any of the resources we've talked about today, learn more about Katie, or anything that we've talked about today, we'll be sure to link all the stuff we have about Katie and all of the resources we've talked about today in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on the Louisiana Farm Bureau Podcast.